Have you ever been underestimated because you're quiet? Have people dismissed you as shy, weak, or insignificant simply because you don't feel the need to fill every silence with noise? If you've ever been told you need to speak up more, be more assertive, or stop being so reserved, then what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see your quiet nature. Because there's something most people don't understand about quiet individuals. Something Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, discovered that should terrify anyone who mistakes silence for weakness. The truth is so unsettling, so contrary to what society teaches us about power and influence, that they've convinced quiet people that their nature is a disadvantage instead of what it actually is, the most potent form of psychological warfare. Today, I'm going to show you why quiet people aren't just observers. They're collectors of intelligence. Why your silence isn't passivity, it's strategy. And why the most dangerous person in any room is often the one saying the least. Jung understood something profound about the psychology of quiet individuals that loud people will never comprehend. True power doesn't announce itself, it accumulates in silence. But here's what makes this truly dangerous. Most quiet people don't even realize the psychological advantage they possess. They've been so conditioned to see their quietness as a flaw that they're completely unconscious of the fact that they're operating with abilities that make them virtually unstoppable once they understand what they're capable of. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 4 psychological weapons that quiet people possess without even knowing it. You'll discover why your silence makes others reveal their deepest secrets and weaknesses. And you'll finally realize that what you've been calling your weakness is actually your most lethal strength. The first dangerous trait Jung identified in quiet people is their ability to become psychological invisible, to blend into environments so completely that others forget they're being observed. While loud people are performing, demanding attention, making themselves the center of every interaction, quiet people are doing something far more valuable. They're watching, listening, learning. Jung called this the observer's advantage. When you're not busy talking, you're busy processing. When you're not performing for others, you're analyzing them. When you're not trying to impress anyone, you're gathering intelligence about everyone. You become a psychological spy in your own life, collecting data about human behavior that gives you unprecedented insight into what makes people tick. Think about what happens when you're in a group setting. While everyone else is competing for airtime, fighting to be heard, desperately trying to prove their worth through words, you're sitting back and seeing patterns they're completely blind to. You notice who interrupts who defers to whom, who's performing confidence, and who actually has it. You see the micro expressions that reveal someone's true feelings beneath their words. You catch the subtle power dynamics that everyone else misses because they're too busy participating to observe. You witness people's masks slipping when they think no one important is watching, not realizing that the quiet person in the corner is the most important witness of all. This creates what Jung would call asymmetrical psychological warfare. They know nothing about you because you're not revealing anything, but you know everything about them because they can't stop revealing themselves. They underestimate you because they mistake your silence for absence, not realizing that your silence is actually presence in its most concentrated form. But here's what makes this particularly dangerous. People feel safe around quiet individuals. They assume that because you don't talk much, you're not judging, not analyzing, not storing information for later use. They let their guard down in your presence in ways they would never do around loud, obviously dominant personalities. So they tell you things they shouldn't tell you. They reveal weaknesses they should keep hidden. They show you sides of themselves they would never show to someone they perceived as a threat. And all the while, you're quietly cataloging everything. building a psychological profile that gives you more power over them than they could ever imagine. The second deadly advantage Jung discovered in quiet people is their mastery of what he called psychological timing. Because you're not rushing to fill every silence, because you're not compelled to react immediately to everything that happens around you, you develop an almost supernatural sense of when to act and when to wait. Loud people are reactive. They respond immediately to stimuli, often without thinking, often in ways that reveal their hand too early or burn bridges they'll later need. But quiet people are strategic. You watch situations unfold. You wait for the perfect moment. You choose your interventions with surgical precision. When you finally do speak, when you finally do act, it carries weight that loud people's constant chatter never could. Because your words are rare, they're valuable. Because your actions are deliberate, they're impactful. Because your interventions are strategic, they're devastating. Jung observed that people who conserve their energy instead of spending it on constant social performance have access to resources that others have exhausted. While loud people burn through their psychological reserves maintaining their image, proving their worth, managing their reputation, you're accumulating power in silence. This means that when a situation requires decisive action, when a moment of truth arrives, when someone needs to step up and take control, you have the energy reserves to do what others cannot. You can think clearly when others are emotionally exhausted. You can act decisively when others are paralyzed by overthinking. You can remain calm when others are losing their minds. But perhaps most dangerously, your quietness gives you emotional detachment that allows you to see situations objectively, while others are clouded by their emotional investment in the outcome. You can make rational decisions because you're not emotionally attached to being right, being liked, or being seen as important. The third psychological weapon Jung identified in quiet people is their natural access to what he called the collective unconscious, the deeper patterns and truths that exist beneath surface-level social interaction. Because you're not caught up in the noise of constant social chatter, your mind has space to perceive things that others miss entirely. You pick up on the undercurrents of tension in a room before anyone else notices. You sense when someone is lying before they finish their sentence. You feel the shift in energy when a relationship is about to end, when a business is about to fail, when someone is about to make a decision that will change everything. This isn't mystical intuition. This is psychological sensitivity developed through silence. When your mind isn't cluttered with the need to respond, react, and perform, it becomes available for deeper processing. You start to notice patterns in human behavior that allow you to predict outcomes with uncanny accuracy. Jung believed that this kind of perception was the foundation of true power, not the power to dominate through force or manipulation, but the power to understand reality so clearly that you can navigate it with minimal effort and maximum effectiveness. People often mistake this quality for mind reading or supernatural ability, when it's actually just the result of paying attention while everyone else is distracted by their own performance. You see what's really happening because you're not busy trying to control what's happening. But here's where this becomes truly dangerous. When you combine this deep perception with the strategic timing we discussed earlier, you become capable of interventions that seem almost magical to others. You know exactly what to say, exactly when to say it, exactly how to shift the entire dynamic of a situation with minimal effort. Others see this and can't understand how you do it, how you always seem to know what's going on beneath the surface, how you can solve problems they can't even see, how you can influence outcomes without seeming to try. They attribute it to luck or natural talent, never realizing that it's the inevitable result of psychological intelligence developed through silence. The fourth and most lethal advantage Jung discovered is that quiet people are masters of what he called projected power. Because you don't reveal much about yourself, Others are forced to fill in the blanks with their own imagination. And human imagination, Jung understood, always tends toward creating more mystery and power than actually exists. When people can't read you, when they can't predict you, when they can't categorize you, you become a psychological Rorschach test. They project onto you whatever they most fear or most desire. If they're insecure, they assume you're judging them. If they're guilty about something, they assume you know about it. If they're looking for strength, they assume you possess it. This creates what Jung called the shadow projection phenomenon. People unconsciously sense that you contain depths they cannot access, knowledge they cannot possess, power they cannot understand. And because they cannot define you, they cannot defend against you. But here's the truly dangerous part. You don't have to do anything to create this effect. Simply by being quiet, by not rushing to explain yourself, by not performing your personality for others' comfort, you automatically become more mysterious, more powerful, more threatening than people who are constantly revealing themselves. This is why quiet people make others uncomfortable without trying to. It's why people often feel judged in your presence, even when you're not judging them. It's why others assume you're plotting something, even when you're just thinking. Your silence creates a vacuum that others fill with their own fears and projections. Jung observed that this projected power often becomes real power. When others treat you as if you're more knowledgeable, more capable, more dangerous than you actually are, you start to develop those qualities to match their expectations. You grow into the power they've projected onto you. Now here's where Jung's understanding becomes revolutionary. Quiet people don't just possess these psychological advantages. They represent an evolutionary advancement in human consciousness. While loud people are still operating from primitive dominance patterns, trying to establish hierarchy through noise and aggression, quiet people have evolved beyond the need for such crude displays of power. You understand that true influence comes not from forcing others to pay attention to you, but from being so worth paying attention to that they cannot look away. Not from demanding respect through volume, but from commanding it through substance. Not from trying to control others, but from being so in control of yourself that others naturally defer to your stability. This is why Jung believed that introverted, quiet individuals were often the most psychologically mature people in any group. They've moved beyond the desperate need for external validation that drives loud behavior. They've learned to find their sense of worth internally, rather than through others' reactions to their performance. But this psychological maturity comes with a responsibility that most quiet people don't realize they carry. Because you possess these unconscious advantages, because you wield this invisible influence, because others naturally defer to your quiet authority, you have more power to shape situations and influence outcomes than you probably understand. Every time you choose to remain silent when you could speak truth, you're making a decision about how to use your power. Every time you observe someone's weaknesses without exploiting them, you're choosing mercy over dominance. Every time you allow others to underestimate you when you could correct their assumption, you're choosing strategy over ego. Jung understood that with great psychological power comes great psychological responsibility. The quiet person who uses their advantages to manipulate others, to gather ammunition for later attacks, to exploit the vulnerabilities they've observed, becomes truly dangerous in the most destructive sense. But the quiet person who uses their psychological intelligence to understand rather than exploit, to protect rather than attack, to heal rather than harm, becomes dangerous in the most constructive sense. They become a force for positive change that others can't resist because they can't even see it coming. Here's what Jung realized about the ultimate power of quiet people. You don't need to announce your dangerous qualities for them to be effective. In fact, announcing them makes them less effective. The moment you start talking about your psychological advantages, you lose them. The moment you start performing your power, instead of simply possessing it, you become just another loud person, desperate for attention. Your true danger lies in your unconscious competence, your effortless influence, your natural ability to see and understand what others miss. But this power is only dangerous in the best sense when it's used consciously, deliberately, ethically. Jung believed that the highest form of human development was individuation, becoming fully yourself rather than what others expect you to be. For quiet people, this means embracing your psychological advantages, not as weapons against others, but as tools for understanding reality more clearly and influencing it more effectively. This means recognizing that your silence is not a social deficit to be overcome, but a psychological asset to be leveraged. Your observational skills are not passive withdrawal from life, but active engagement with life at a deeper level. Your strategic timing is not social awkwardness, but social intelligence of the highest order. And your projected power, the mystery that others can't solve, the depths they can't fathom, the influence they can't resist. This is not something to apologize for or try to make more comfortable for others. This is your natural advantage in a world that mistakes noise for significance, volume for value, performance for power. The truly dangerous quiet person is not the one who uses these abilities to harm others, but the one who uses them to see clearly, act wisely, and influence positively while flying completely under the radar of those who think power must be loud to be real. You are more dangerous than you know, more powerful than you realize, more influential than you understand. Not because you're aggressive or manipulative, but because you possess psychological advantages that most people don't even know exist, let alone how to defend against. Your quietness is not your weakness, it's your weapon. Your silence is not your limitation, it's your superpower. Your invisibility is not your disadvantage, it's your strategic position. And the fact that you don't even realize how dangerous you are, that makes you most dangerous of all. The world fears quiet people because quiet people see everything, understand everyone, and influence outcomes without anyone realizing they're doing it. You are the psychological equivalent of a stealth fighter, operating with abilities that others can't detect, can't counter, and can't compete with. Stop apologizing for your quiet nature. Stop trying to become more like loud people. Stop believing that you need to perform your personality for others' comfort. You are already perfect as you are, already powerful beyond measure, already dangerous in all the right ways. If you recognized yourself in this description, if you felt something awaken as you realized the unconscious power you've been carrying, then you're ready to start using your psychological advantages consciously and deliberately. This is just the beginning of understanding the true extent of your quiet power. Subscribe to continue exploring the psychological truths that will help you embrace your dangerous nature and learn to wield your invisible influence with wisdom and purpose.